Versatile Mage. Chapter 526. The trick to avoid the undead. Use this to cleanse the poison away, but without a healer, it's not possible for his legs to recover, the old man sitting on a wooden stool and smoking a cigar told them. Wang Tong handed him an automatic lighter and a Chungwa cigar, but the old man shook his head. The villagers were neither stubborn nor behind in technology, but they had to rely on the traditional lifestyle to maintain the serenity of the village. The old man told the group that there was no empty hut for them. They had no choice but to stay in a shed for the night. They were all soldiers who had endured tough training, hence the shed was very comfortable as long as they didn't have to worry about the undead. We'll talk in the day. Just a reminder, don't simply run off anywhere, especially leaving the village. I'll tell the chief that you're here, the old man said, before leaving the group. The soldiers laid down on the slightly damp ground of the shed. They were too worn out to chat with one another. They spread out the clothes on the ground and went to sleep. Most of them had gotten used to witnessing blood and death. It was a close call tonight, but it did not stop them from falling asleep. Everyone fell asleep without appointing anyone to stand guard. Zhang Xiaohe woke up a few times throughout the night because of the cold. The first time he woke up, the moon was still high up in the sky. The second time, the moon was slightly slanted. The third time, his surroundings were in complete darkness, so quiet that it was kind of scary, yet his fatigue immediately dragged him back into a deep sleep. When his eyes next sprang open, it was already daytime. "Come over here, you son of a bitch. Who told you to wash your feet in the upstream? I'll skin you alive. Going to do the laundry. Let me tag along. My husband is lazy, but somehow he's very active at changing his clothes." The beating of a gong woke the group up. As they opened their eyes, they could see kids running around, women busy with their chores, and old folks taking a stroll around the village. The village was deadly quiet last night, but it was rather lively in the day, just like an ordinary village. When everyone woke up, some of the kids with runny noses gathered around the shed and observed the soldiers like they were foreigners. "You're all awake, head to the village hall. The chief wants to see you," the old man who had been standing guard last night said. He brought the group to eat breakfast before going to the village hall. The hall was not big. It had a small front yard with a huge pond filled with clear water. The bottom of the pond had lots of pebbles. If one were to take a closer look, they would discover red letters engraved on the surface of the pebbles, which looked like names. In our village, either the youngsters or old folks, those who are leaving would write the names on the pebbles and throw them into the pond. It prevents them from turning into those things outside, explained the old man indifferently. They arrived at the village hall after they crossed the yard. A few old men sat on the wooden chairs with carefree looks. None of them seemed afraid, despite living among the undead. A middle-aged man was seated in the leading position. His forehead was filled with wrinkles. He looked rather old, even with his smile. Even his good skincare was unable to hide his age. "I'm the chief of this village. You can call me Fang Gu," said the man who called himself Fang Gu. "Our chief is impressive. He's a magician," complimented the old man who had stood guard. "I'm nothing compared to the experts from the army," replied Fang Gu with a smile, sounding quite humble. "Experts? One dead and one severely injured before they arrived," blurted out the old man. Fang Gu gave the old man a stare. The old man was aware that he had said something unpleasant to the ears. He immediately excused himself, most likely heading home to take a rest. "Sorry about that. The old man is just being talkative. It's been dull lately, as the undead appear even before the sky turns completely dark. The creatures are extremely savage, too. You must be very careful no matter what mission you're on," Fang Gu advised in a friendly manner. "Thanks for the reminder. The truth is, we're here to rescue a scouting squad. We're told to report back if we found any news, if you happen to know something," said the Captain Chin Hu. "Oh, them. They came to the village before, and left after giving us some warnings. They did not stay for long. They must have headed for the other villages, answered Fang Gu immediately, remembering the squad. Were they fine when they came here? Asked Shi Xiaoju. Yeah. There were 9 of them. None of them were missing. They must have gotten rid of their communication devices when they came into your village. We lost contact with them around this area. Please tell us if you know where they went, said Qin Hu. You can't bring your communication devices into the village. It's the same for the other villages, too. As for where they went, it should be Hua village in the west. I heard someone mention it, said the chief. Oh. Thanks. After the conversation with the chief came to an end, a balding old man sitting beside him spoke up slowly. Since you're here, just let you know that we don't want the army to send another squad to look for you here too. By the way, it will take at least 2 days to reach Hua village from here. We're magicians. That applies to magicians, emphasized the balding old man. Qin Hu and Shi Xiaoju frowned immediately. It meant that they had no choice but to spend a night in the wild if they decided to go to Hua village. Initially, they thought they would not have any problem staying a night in the wild, but after what happened last night, they had no intention of taking that risk. Chief, the undead have been restless lately. We probably won't stand any chance against them, but we have to complete the mission entrusted to us. Please tell us the trick to avoid the undead. It's clear that your village is safe in the land of the undead, and I even heard rumors about villagers journeying in the wild safely at night. I believe you must have some special trick passed down for generations, asked Shi Xiaoju sternly. No, it's the secret of our village. We can't tell outsiders, the old man declined instantly. Besides, even if we told you the trick, you can't use it anyway. You have to think of some other way, said another old man. Fang Gu seemed eager to help, but he was wearing a helpful look too. After a while, he suddenly spoke. We can't tell you the village's secret, but there's another way you can try. The only thing is, if anything goes wrong, you'll end up being surrounded by the walking corpses. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 527. Critical Breathing. Prior to this, Zhang Xiaohe never thought nightfall would be so dreadful. As the sun slowly set on the horizon, the remaining peace in his heart was dissipating at the same rate. A great fear loomed over the vast land. It's dark again, someone among the group had to say. Everyone felt their legs weakening for a second, as if countless filthy claws had suddenly grabbed onto them. Let's hope that we were just unlucky last time, finding ourselves close to a burial pit, murmured Shi Xiaoju. Brace yourselves, I don't want us to be ambushed again like last time, warned Qin Hu. The mountains in the south were very tall, like a giant black dragon lying across the land on their left, covering a distance of a few kilometers. The group departed straight to the west. The sun was like the hour hand of a clock, serving as a timer. Its brilliance was red, like the color of blood, scattered across the mountains in the distance, and on the black soil the group was stepping on. Darkness had already filled the place behind them, as if there was no turning back from this point onward. The smell of rotting flesh and the dead lingered in the air. The group still remembered when they first set foot onto this land. They were still joking around and laughing, not treating the undead seriously. However, none of them were speaking along the way now. Their footsteps felt heavier, and their hearts began to race all of a sudden. Will the trick that the chief told us actually work? Wang Tong asked uneasily. The chief had told the group that the undead did not rely on their vision to track their prey. Some of the zombies' heads were completely smashed, leaving them with no eyes. However, they could capture the scent of any living thing. The undead had extremely bad vision, especially the low-grade ones, but whenever something alive walked past, every undead within a few hundred meters would be attracted. It was because they were able to capture the scent of the living. Places filled with the undead lingered with a deathly aura. Even their breath held the scent of death. The breath blown out by a living thing was alive. Science said the majority of it consisted of carbon dioxide. The undead had bad vision and average hearing, yet due to the scent of death, they could easily smell any living thing within a few hundred meters. The scent of something alive was like a plate of delicacies to them. They could smell it from a great distance away. The undead were always starving, and a living thing always needed to breathe. As a result, the undead nearby would simply follow the pleasant aroma to their next meal. The only way to avoid the undead was to deal with the problem of breathing. Servant class undead lacked intelligence, hence as long as a human concealed their breathing or slightly modified it, it was difficult for the undead to locate them. As for the warrior level undead, their senses of smell and hearing were a lot stronger, with average vision. Therefore, if they stumbled into a warrior level creature, not only would they have to deal with their breathing, they had to be extremely still too. This thing looks just like garlic. I wonder how bad it's going to taste, said one of the soldiers, Bai Lu. It's turning dark. Eat it, one each, ordered Captain Chin Hu. The group followed the captain's order. They quickly took out something with a shape similar to garlic, but pitch black in color, from their bags. The thing was called ash garlic, one of the few crops that would grow in the land of the undead. Its taste was a lot worse than garlic. Once they ate it, the breath they exhaled was extremely foul. However, the locals carried a few with them at all times as a safety precaution. Once they ate the ash garlic, their breath would turn foul, strong enough to cover their scent. The undead would simply mistake them as their own kind who forgot to brush their teeth at night, and would not chase after them. In ancient times, there was a saying that garlic was able to keep devils away. It was most likely because the devils would not want to get close to you after smelling the garlic. As soon as night fell, everyone ate an ash garlic each, and immediately came the sound of retching. Fuck, it's worse than eating poop. You sound like you've tried poop before. It's disgusting. Allow me to puke for a while. Everyone was a soldier in the group, who had eaten all kinds of things when surviving in the wild, yet they all still felt like vomiting after eating the ash garlic, showing how bad it tasted. Hang in there, if you don't want to die. Captain, please don't face me when you talk. Shush. Quiet. Shi Xiaoju suddenly urged the group with an alert look. Everyone immediately paled and held their breaths. The ground began to loosen up, like someone trying to crawl out from the grave. They could clearly hear the sound of something knocking on a coffin. Everyone glanced at one another before staring at the ground under their feet. Suddenly, a head covered in worms poked out from the soil. Its hair was dry, and only half of the scalp remained, exposing a shiny skull, an eerie sight. The head appeared right beside a battle mage, Xiao Jing, her face as pale as a sheet of paper. She subconsciously wanted to draw a star pattern to blast the disgusting head away, yet Shi Xiaoju quickly grabbed her and stopped her from doing so. Shi Xiaoju had made a wise choice, as a few other heads with half-exposed skulls crawled out from the ground. In just a few minutes, more zombies rose up from the soil. They were enjoying the dark bath and breathing the dead air. If their eyes looked slightly more alive, they could be mistaken as a pack of creatures coming out to enjoy some fresh air. The group of 8 turned into statues. They could feel their hearts pounding, like they would pop out at any second. 2 zombies had crawled out of the ground close to Zhang Xiaoho, right in front of and behind Wang Tong. Zhang Xiaoho was so close that he could see the empty hole at the back of the zombie's skull. It was obvious that the person had died when his brain was punctured by something sharp. He did not dare to move, nor breathe. However, it was impossible for anyone to not breathe. Even if he could hold his breath for a minute, he would simply die from suffocating if he held it any longer. Finally, Zhang Xiaoho reached his limit. He started to exhale some air through his nose. As soon as he exhaled, the zombie in front of him turned around instantly. Its bloodshot eyes were staring right at Zhang Xiaoho, and it raised the rusted saber it was holding too. Zhang Xiaohu's heart skipped a beat. The 2 zombies were not enough to pose any threat to him. A simple wind disk would blast them into the sky. The problem was, there were at least 100 zombies around them. If he attacked, the zombies would simply sense the energy from his magic, and completely surround them. Zhang Xiaohou did not dare to move, but he was already at his limit. He had no idea if the ash garlic was working effectively. No one could possibly stay calm under the circumstances. Surrounded by the undead, the filthy creatures could easily strip them to the bones in seconds. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 528. Why did you leave me? Zhang Xiaohu's face turned blue from holding his breath too long. He finally exhaled a mouthful, as he would have lost consciousness if he did not breathe. The zombie in front glanced at Zhang Xiaohou confusingly, as if it was completely unaware of the guy that had somehow appeared behind it. The zombie lowered the rusty saber and did not attack Zhang Xiaohou. Meanwhile, the zombie behind Zhang Xiaohou completely ignored him and continued to roam aimlessly. It would glance into the distance at times, or lower its head, trying to find the arm it had lost yesterday. Phew! Zhang Xiaohou let out a relieved sigh. The others could feel their legs cramping because of the tension, and they almost fell to the ground. The trick worked. Neither the skeletons nor the zombies attacked them. They were simply glancing at the humans who were uttering the foul breath in confusion. However, these undead did not possess any intelligence. As long as the thing was not alive, it was meaningless to attack them. Maybe they were just stinky. Captain Qin, who raised his head without saying a word, signaling the group to continue forward in formation. The group quickly gathered. They were still alert at the start, afraid that something would go wrong. However, as they walked past the undead at very close range, the zombies would only groan at them in warning for straying too close, without lunging at them. As such, they began to lower the guard. If we knew about this trick all along, why would we still be afraid of the undead? Wang Tong seemed elated from the success. These ash garlics are extremely rare. You might find them on the black market, but there won't be many. The chief has spared us some of their stock they had saved up, said Shi Xiaoju. Either way, it's good that we don't have to fight those things. Once we locate the bodies of the scouting squad, we'll go back at once, said Bai Lu. It seems like us talking won't attract their attention either. The group realized that it was fine talking in front of the undead. As long as their breath was covered by the foul scent of the ash garlic, the undead would not notice their presence. However, everyone began to panic slightly as they continued along the journey across the vast land. Every few steps would lead them to a few more undead. The density of the undead had completely surpassed their estimation. Every 100 square meters would have 1 or 2 undead roaming around. By that standard, the whole area would be showing as bloody red on the electronic map. As they proceeded, they suddenly saw a group of several dozen zombies ahead. The zombies were stacked together like a wall, standing right in the path they were heading in. The zombies slowly dragged their bodies along, uttering unpleasant cries. Before any living thing captured their attention, the zombies would simply roam around aimlessly, like walking corpses. Let's just walk past them. They won't attack us anyway. Wang Tong led the way with a smile. However, when Wang Tong was less than 20 meters away, the group of zombies suddenly turned around and stared at Wang Tong with bloodshot eyes. Wang Tong was stunned. The zombies began to scream and charged in Wang Tong's direction. As the zombies sprinted across the land, they swept a huge cloud of dust into the air. Quick, the ash garlic, yelled Shi Xiaoju. Luckily, Wang Tong reacted fairly quickly. He took out an ash garlic and munched it. The effects worked fairly quickly. Wang Tong was almost knocked out by his own foul breath. The zombies were right in front of Wang Tong, yet they suddenly lost their target and came to a stop. They simply stared at one another in a foolish manner. A moment later, the zombies returned to their aimless roaming as if they had forgotten why they were running in the first place. Wang Tong stood in the middle of the zombies, having almost wet his pants in fear. As everything returned to normal, Wang Tong finally burst out cursing. This stinky thing only lasts for such a short time. We don't have a lot of the ash garlics, and it seems like they don't last long either. We have to make use of the time, said Shi Xiaoju with a frown. Since the effect of the ash garlic ended for Wang Tong, it would be the same for everyone. The others quickly took out an ash garlic and ate it. The cold moon hanging high up in the sky shone down, observing the moving dead. The land was cold but restless, as the undead who had overslept would rise from the ground and roam aimlessly like homeless scavengers. When there was nothing alive for them to feed on, the undead would pick up stuff or dig things up from the ground. The broken limbs they found would always come in handy. Occasionally, they would dig up a burial pit and find themselves a nutritional habitat. Spend a few years there, and they might even evolve into stronger undead. Along the journey, the group had witnessed the vicissitudes of life. They had no idea why these things would even exist in their world. A tide suddenly erupted ahead, sweeping the black soil into the air, fairly shocking under the moonlight. The tide was dragging dead bodies, torn clothes, and zombies that happened to be in the area forward. The whole ground began to vibrate as an undead with a body as strong as an ox crawled out from the hole. The undead poked out of the soil, revealing sturdy muscles as impenetrable as armor plates. Its limbs were thick and sturdy. It had 4 limbs in total, and somehow 2 of them were fused with hatchets stained with blood. The other 2 were like long sabers. It was no different than a meat mincer when it started to swing the weapons. "It's the Hatchet Corps General," blurted out Wang Tong in shock. "Has it been following us around? Or perhaps we were still inside its territory all along." The group of 8 subconsciously backed off when they saw it. The Corps General was the actual reason they almost got wiped out in the first place, and now, the giant creature had appeared once again. "Don't panic, we've eaten the ash garlic. It won't notice us, right? Don't move, stay right where you are. The chief has mentioned that the warrior level undead have good hearing. They can tell if we are undead based on our movements. So don't move, and you'll be fine," said Shi Xiaoju. The group clearly remembered the chief's warning. They turned into statues, staring at the Hatchet Corps General in astonishment. Zhang Xiaohou did not move his gaze. He realized that the undead's head was gone, but as he took a closer look, it did not seem like it was beheaded. The others were aware that the Hatchet Corps General looked slightly different than before, but none of them made a noise. God knew if talking would attract the Hatchet Corps General's attention. The sound of something digging its way up from its flesh was heard. An out-of-proportion head slowly stuck out from the neck of the Corps General. Disgusting black hair stained with blood appeared first, clumping on the Corps General's neck. A head appeared after, which looked the same as a human's. Finally, the head turned 180 degrees, revealing a face covered in blood and ichor, but most importantly full of gall and hatred. Why did you leave me?" Its mouth opened, shrieking hateful words. The group could feel their scalps exploding on seeing this. The head that had popped out from the Hatchet Corps General's body was the dead Battlemaga, Jia Shi. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 529. Dark Abyss, 10,000 Corpses Pit, Part 1. There were 2 ways for the undead to evolve. First, using the presence of death to nurture themselves, like the fermentation of alcohol, allowing their strength to grow as time went by. Second, by merging with and devouring others. Combining the body parts of dead corpses to their own bodies with brute force would grant them the capabilities of the corpses when they were alive to a certain degree. The Corps General had used Jia's eye's head to grant itself a human's vision. Since she had only died recently, her hatred still remained, hence she had come looking for the team as night arrived. Ash garlic, staying still, none of them were effective against a Corps General consumed by strong hatred, as she could still recognize their faces within a day of her death. "Come, stay with me. I want you all to come stay with me." The head on the Corps General screeched at them with terrifying hatred. The Corps General had the ability to command the undead. Following the scream, the zombies within a few hundred meters away obeyed its summon, sharing the same target as the Corps General. The zombies too began to scream. Their rotten legs that were initially dragged around like puppets suddenly received a strong burst of energy, turning them into the most savage beasts, which charged toward the humans and surrounded them. Countless black figures were running at them. The density of the undead in the area was high to begin with. The entire place trembled as the summoning took place. The undead had gone totally mad. The 8 soldiers that were hiding in the middle of the undead suddenly became the freshest meat available. "Run! Quick!" yelled Chin Hu. There was more undead around them than previously, including a corpse general driven by hatred. They had no chance of fighting them whatsoever. The 8 soldiers quickly fled into the distance, casting magic continuously as they ran, summoning wild fiery fists and erupting tornadoes. Despite the bodies scattering in the air together with the splatter of blood and liquid, the zombies were still chasing them relentlessly. As the group was running, no one had time to look after Lu Hongjing, whose legs no longer had any flesh. Lu Hongjing was a water magician. He barely had a water barrier protecting him from the undead. However, there were simply too many crashing onto him, like rugby players stacking on top of one another as they fought for the ball. More zombies desperately tried to squeeze themselves between the gaps. Lu Hongjing's cries were completely blocked off. The group could only see a pile of zombies where he was. They saw parts of his flesh being thrown out from the pile, which were immediately taken away by the zombies nearby. Not a single drop of blood was left, as the zombies even fell to their knees to suck it all up. "Don't look back," Shi Xiaoju snapped at Zhang Xiaoho. The greatest taboo in the land of the undead was turning back. Even if their blood-related brothers had fallen, they were not allowed to turn back and rescue them. The most they could do was to simply come back and retrieve their corpses during the day, just so they would not turn into more undead. There's no such thing as rescuing in this land. The rescue team is basically the corpse retrieving team, emphasized Shi Xiaoju. Zhang Xiaoho bit his lips and continued to run. The zombies showed no sign of decreasing. There were always new ones blocking the path ahead. The undead seemed to have unlimited energy. Even those that were left a long ways behind were still chasing after them. I've got you. Come, stay with me. A terrifying voice was heard. Zhang Xiaoho turned around and realized that Captain Qin Hu had somehow been left behind. 2 zombies were grabbing onto his legs. A moment later, one of the hatchet corpse general's arms stabbed through his body. The arm slowly raised into the air. Impaled by the arm, Qin Hu was lifted into the air, hanging right in front of Jia Zai's face. Jia Shi burst into an eerie laughter, as if she were going to tear Qin Hu apart with her own mouth. Qin Hu turned around. The captain glanced at Zhang Xiaoho with his final breath. His mouth was filled with blood. Despite the great pain, he was still trying to tell Zhang Xiaoho something. "Don't turn back." Qin Hu used his remaining breath to tell Zhang Xiaoho. The following second, Qin Hu was torn apart by hatchet corpse general's 3 other limbs. Only the head was left in good condition and set aside by the corpse general. Damn it, damn it. Zhang Xiaoho lowered his head and kept on running. His face was hurting from the wind slapping his face. Zhang Xiaoho had no idea how fast he was. Either way, the zombies were merely puppets blocking his path. The zombies could not stop him. Even the warrior-level corpse general had no chance to catch him. However, his only attack was Wind Disc. He was unable to save anyone, let alone blasting the zombies surrounding his comrades away. He initially thought he had grown stronger, that he was able to face tougher challenges and able to save the people he wanted to save. In the end, he was still the same, so tiny that running was the only thing he could do. It would be great if Mo Fan was here. He would simply use his strongest destructive spells to kill all the zombies. He would find a way to eliminate even the powerful corpse general. 2 elements were nowhere near enough to deal with the undead. Zhang Xiaoho had never had such a strong urge to become an advanced magician. After becoming an advanced magician, he would have access to 3 elements. He would at least have some spells he could use to fight the zombies. He would be able to cast the advanced spells, either the Eyes of the Rock Demon, Petrify, and the Wind Wings of the Wind Element would help a great deal. At least he would not be running like a coward. Zhang Xiaoho, don't go that way. yelled Shi Xiaoju. Zhang Xiaohou quickly collected his thoughts and realized that the ground in front of him was collapsing. First, the soil loosened up. Next, the ground began to sink. It felt like the ground was hollow underneath, and as the surface began to vibrate, the thin layer suddenly collapsed, revealing a pitch-black abyss right in front of him. There were several zombies on the ground, but as the abyss appeared, they all dropped into it. The angled moonlight was barely shining upon the walls of the deep abyss. Half of it was visible, while the other half was completely dark. The only sound was the cries of the zombies as they fell into darkness. Loud cries of the undead suddenly rose in the pit, as the ground began to tremble wildly. What's this? Zhang Xiaohou halted right in front of the abyss, sliding right to the edge of the pit as his speed was too high. He glanced down in astonishment, and saw the most terrifying sight he ever saw in his life. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 530. Dark Abyss, 10,000 Corpses Pit, Part 2. The red eyes below were packed together densely. They were not a dazzling sight like the stars in the sky, but so crowded together that one could simply feel goosebumps across their body and their heart being penetrated by the extremely greedy and savage gazes. The abyss was very dark, but Zhang Xiaohou could still see countless bodies and limbs squirming down in the pit. They were stacked together, layer after layer. The zombies were climbing on top of one another like moving mountains. The abyss was huge, yet he could not see even the slightest sign of the soil. All of it was filled with zombies, numbing his scalp. The few zombies that were initially on the surface before it collapsed had dropped into the pit like raindrops falling into the ocean, lost completely among the rest of the undead. Thousands, tens of thousands. With so many undead gathered in a single pit, it was like lifting up the lid of a burning pot, resembling the 18th floor of hell, where countless souls were being tortured. The dreadful scene was thrown open to the mundane world, displaying the torture and pain that the souls were suffering. Their tremendous hatred had materialized into a giant fountain of black vapor rising into the sky. Zhang Xiaohou was completely stunned in place. He was the closest to the abyss. Just a few more steps, he would have fallen into it. Now, he realized that he would prefer to be butchered by the hatchet corpse general rather than falling into this pit filled with zombies. It was no different than finding himself in hell. Zhang Xiaohou had nowhere to run with the hatchet corpse general chasing behind him. He would not make it in time running around the edge of the pit. Jia Zai's dark face was approaching him with her long tongue writhing through the air, as if she was going to suck his blood dry. The hatchet swung wildly. Zhang Xiaohou clenched his teeth. With his back against the pit of zombies, he had no choice but to have a final showdown with the hatchet corpse general. However, as he had just prepared to fight to his death, the hatchet corpse general suddenly moved in a different direction and chased after Shi Xiaoju. An eerie laugh burst into his ears. Zhang Xiaohou had never experienced the feeling of being unable to move his feet due to overwhelming fear before. It was not just because the deadly hatchet corpse general had just spared his life, but the fact that a hell on earth was right behind him, the burning pot with countless zombies. He fell to his knees weakly. It took him some time to gather his strength again and rise to his feet. He could sense the tremendous aura of death right behind him, which would most likely drag any living thing nearby into it. Zhang Xiaohou did not want to die in this place. Without the hatchet corpse general chasing after him, Zhang Xiaohou was finally able to run back in the direction they had just come from. He could not see where the others were, or tell if they were dead or had actually managed to escape. The elite specifically picked to form the special team had collapsed at the first blow from the undead. They were merely prey in the end. The Magic Association, in the clock tower. In a rather old-style office, a young woman on monitoring duty rushed toward the meeting room with an electronic screen in her hand. "Black, black," screamed the woman as she barged into the room. "Calm down, what is this about?" said the vice chairman of the Ancient Capital's Magic Association. "Black, there are black dots in this area. It's a dark abyss," said the woman as she pointed at the electronic screen. The screen was an electronic map, showing the vicinity of the ancient capital and the areas nearby. It was now midnight, and the areas outside of the ancient capital were displaying as blood red on the map. The color was bright and astonishing, implying that the undead were a lot more restless than usual. On top of that, in the middle of the red areas, a black dot suddenly flickered. Black implied that it was a forbidden land for humans. A purple area was already considered a kingdom of demon beasts, where even the supreme magicians had little chance of surviving. Above that, a black area meant that any living thing had zero chance of surviving. Somehow, in the midst of the red, a black dot had appeared. It was a sign that the most terrifying thing in the land of the undead had appeared. Is there something wrong with the device? Why would there be black? It literally means the undead are stacking up into mountains. A young member of the Magic Association scoffed with a smile, before looking at Vice Chairman Peng Yu. He quickly withdrew the smile from his face when he saw the stern look on the Vice Chairman's face. You know nothing. This means that the Dark Abyss has appeared. The woman shot back, her voice rising as her control wavered. Dark Abyss. I've been here for quite some time, but I've never heard of that, replied the young man uncertainly. Vice Chairman Peng Yu exhaled deeply after some time and said, Did you say that the area would only be black when the zombies are stacking up into mountains? Yeah, no matter how dense the zombies are, there's no way it would reach that level, said the young man. The truth is, that's exactly what the Dark Abyss looks like. It's also known as the 10,000 Corpses Pit, or the Abyss of Hell. The device won't make a mistake. A dark abyss has indeed appeared to the west of Sunny Goat Village. No. No way. The young man's face stiffened. Tell the other factions that a dark abyss has appeared. Even this thing has shown itself in the land of the undead. If we can't find the reason behind it, this whole place is going to turn into hell, said Vice Chairman Peng Yu sternly. It was common for the undead to roam around the ancient capital. For thousands of years, humans here had learned how to coexist with the undead. However, since the extraordinary behavior of the drifting sand river, this land had gone out of control as well. More undead began to appear before nightfall, and high-level creatures were spotted in human territories. Even this pit, the closest thing to what hell looked like, had appeared. Wasn't all this enough to imply that something big was about to happen? The ancient capital had stood firmly for thousands of years despite the undead having their eyes on the city all along. The people here had learned how to defend themselves and fight against the undead in a never-ending war that had lasted for a few thousand years. Undead appearing in the daytime, the restless zombies, the appearance of the Dark Abyss, there had to be a reason behind it all. It was said that the river flowing from the mountain close to Sunny Goat Village was the cleanest around dawn, perfect for brewing tea. Su Xiaoluo would rise from her bed when the sun had just risen to fetch water from the river. She would carry buckets of it back and pour them into the tanks at her house. Not only did her dad need the water to brew some nice tea, the water was crucial for bathing, too. On this day, she had gone to retrieve some water as usual. Even though she could hear the cries of zombies in the distance, she was not afraid. She scooped the water up and immediately discovered the water was red when she was about to pour it into the bucket. The water had the smell of blood. Su Xiaoluo frowned in annoyance, assuming that a stupid zombie had ended up in the upstream again. She glanced upward at the upstream and saw a man covered in blood lying on the ground. Half of his body was in the water. The blood continued to flow from his body. The man had died a terrible death. Su Xiaoluo was rather daring, having lived so close to the undead all her life. She walked up to the body and flipped it over. He's still breathing. Someone, help. Su Xiaoluo immediately called for the villagers when she discovered that the man was still barely breathing. Chapter end. Please guys like, comment, share, and subscribe.